Hi, welcome. I'm just waiting for people to filter in. You're in the webinar for the Storytelling Notice of Funding Available with the Missouri Developmental Disabilities Council. We've got a couple minutes, so I'll start right at 2 o'clock. Thank you for being here, and we'll get started here in a minute. All right, that was me staring at my computer screen, waiting for the countdown for 2 o'clock. I am going to get started. Thank you all for being here. My name is Leanne Hahn. I'm with the Missouri Developmental Disabilities Council, and you are in the webinar for the recent Notice of Funding Available that we announced for a storytelling project. I am a white woman. I'm wearing a white tank top sweater, and I've got dark hair that's pulled up in a ponytail today. There's lots of technical things going on, but I want to go through a few things as we get started. This is being recorded. That's for a couple of reasons. It's to serve as a resource for applicants, for you all, if you wanted to rewatch this. Also, it helps make sure that I capture all of the questions and make sure that they get posted in our resources. So, hang on, now my slides aren't going. There we go. So I'm going to go for the Q&A today. This is just to give you as much information as we can about this storytelling project and support you in your applications for it. A couple housekeeping things is this is a webinar, not a typical Zoom call. And so I think we're all a little more familiar maybe with a Zoom call and how to ask questions and things like that. And so just note that this is a webinar. If you do have a question, put it in the chat, or you can use the Q&A feature, either one. The chat is seen by everybody. The Q&A is just going to come to me or my colleague, who is wonderful and supporting me in this. So we will be able to see, there she is. Stacy is amazing. And just note that as we communicate with each other about technical things, she may text me if there was something going on. So if I do look at my phone, it is purely for this call. Also, to limit distractions, we're just going to have the slide and me on here. I will answer all the questions that are posted that I'm able to answer at the end. If I don't have the answer right now, those will be provided within 48 hours or 2 working days. We'll record. You'll get the slides and the answers to the Q&A. And yeah, if you need to ask a question, you can type it in the chat, or towards the end, you can indicate like, you know, hey, I want to be unmuted and I'd rather talk through this question. which I can totally appreciate as a preferred verbal communicator. So I'm going to get started. We are going to go over kind of who and what MODDC is. That's the acronym for Missouri Developmental Disabilities Council. Talk about the 5-year state plan, the project, and the NoFA. That's what I'll say from here on out. Notice of funding available is what that stands for. Sometimes they're called RFPs. And then we'll talk about budget and match. So what is MODDC? We're a 23-member council. We're comprised primarily of self-advocates or people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. You'll hear me say IDD. That's what that stands for, and families. And the council is appointed by the governor to manage council activities. We are part of a 3-part system that was established by the DD Act, and there's a chart on this slide that has the three triad parts. We love acronyms and alphabet soup in state and federal government, and so I apologize ahead of time. I'll break them down. But we've got the USEDs, the DD councils, and the PNAs. And this triad exists in every state and territory. So DD Council is the easiest to start with. That's us. That's the Missouri DD Council. So we work to have systems change through projects and advocacy, through the advisement or direction of our council, which if you're familiar with nonprofit work, it's much like a board. They direct what we do. And make those kind of high-level decisions for the work of the council. USED stands for University Centers of Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. So there's a USED in every state, and this for us is the University of Missouri, Kansas City. They are our kind of academic, research-oriented arm of the work that we do. And they also engage in training and community advocacy work. And then finally are the PNAs, protection and advocacy. This is the lawyer arm, the attorney arm, legal arm, if you will, of what of the work of the DD system or the DD network. Next slide. Oh no, I just clicked on a hyperlink. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Things are hyperlinked in the PowerPoint, so you'll be able to do that when that is shared. You can click on those things. Here's the mission of our organization. Hopefully you've dug into our website and seen more about the work of the council. If you aren't familiar, we assist families, individuals in the community to include people with developmental disabilities in every aspect of life. Here's some examples of DD listed on this slide: ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, cerebral palsy, other things. There's also a link on here for the full federal definition of disability. We engage in systems change in a number of ways. There's kind of 2 big buckets that we work in. So we do policy advocacy, which is educating shareholders and policymakers on the barriers people with disabilities face, which is a big part of the project we're going to talk about today. And then we also, this project is both things. So we also use federal funds and invest those back in the state through grants. And so since 2019, MODDC has invested at this point, over $2 million in projects that directly benefit Missourians with DD and their families. We get spending authority for federal funds. So again, these are little tidbits of background information, but that will show up in how you engage in this grant and engage with the council. So it's important to know. There's a graphic here. The money starts with the federal government. It flows through the state of Missouri, through the Department of Mental Health. They are referred to as our designated state agency, an alphabet soup, or DSA. So you'll see that probably more if you're selected as you engage in invoicing with us. You'll see more things kind of pop up from the Department of Mental Health. So we want to make sure that's clear that they are connected to the work that we do as council. So then it goes from, the DSA or the Department of Mental Health to MODDC, and then we channel that out to our grantees. This slide talks about the MODDC 5-year state plan. This guides the work of the council. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with creating a strategic plan and then adhering to that plan for a period of time. We do that in 5-year chunks. It is informed by a comprehensive review and analysis. This last state plan, we worked with our USED, our UMKC, to do the research and focus groups and information gathering to give us the data to inform what kind of goals that the council wanted to set for their state plan. And our current plan is October 1st, 2021, and it's going to end on September 30th, 2026. So we're nearly to the end of our 5-year state plan. This project is going to fit under our goal 3. There's 3 goals in our state plan. I encourage you to go to our website and look at the full state plan. But this is that people with DD and family members guide changes to Missouri laws, policies, and practices by informing and educating the public on challenges and solutions. So the project, storytelling, is very exciting. So project overview and description, this is all pulled directly from the NoFA, so I'm sure you're familiar. Just that there's a lot of research and evidence that stories are a key part of systems change, especially when we're talking about legislative advocacy or advocating with decision makers on changing barriers to systems that exist. This project will center the lived experiences of Missourians with IDD and their families. The stories should engage the reader in understanding the daily life and systemic barriers faced by people with IDD. There will be a story from each of Missouri's 114 counties and St. Louis City. There will be a component of traveling to the places where people are, whether that be homes or churches or places of work, to really get an authentic view of their story. And then we encourage other mediums to supplement the storytelling. So we'll talk about the requirements. There's the written requirement of the story with photos, but it could be that someone expresses themselves best through art or a movement. So we encourage creativity in that. For project management, I will be the project coordinator for this. So I am doing the work of the council and making sure that we are accomplishing what the council set out to do. So I worked with the council members to draft the NoFA and make sure the outcomes and everything looked the way they wanted. I'll field the questions at the Q&A like we're doing today. I'll be the point person throughout the NoFA and throughout the contract process. And then working with the grantees. So I think this is an important one for grantees to know. There's a lot of, not a lot, but there's red tape and different systems involved in the grants that we manage. And so I am with you, in this case, the PC, along the way throughout the entire grant, helping with quarterly check-ins, invoicing, technical assistance to make sure you're successful and can do what you do best, which is going to be tell these stories and reach these outcomes. So a little bit about the NoFA application and how you should think about your application and what materials you're going to do. So it's important to kind of look at the full picture of the philosophy or the lens that the council uses to view the work that they're doing. So this slide has an inverted triangle with 3 kind of tiers of your application. So 3 lenses to think about as you are submitting your proposal. So there's the top tier, which is kind of the philosophy or the 30,000-foot view, some technical aspects of that, and then finally the application. So I'm going to start with philosophy and kind of talk about models of disability, general ways to kind of think about how you're writing things, a little nuanced, but still something to consider. People first versus identity, first language, messaging, and different things. So I'm going to get into that. This slide shows the kind of the philosophy of models of disability. So there's this old model on the left and the new model on the right-hand side. So there's the medical model being the old, the interactional socio kind of political model on the right. So you see examples of this, but basically, I'm looking at a note here. So the old model is that the disability or the condition of a person is a problem to be solved. It's a medical thing that we need to fix. It's a deficiency. It's something that someone has and it's bad. There's focus on a cure or treating it. So that is the medical model. The new model, or kind of the socio-political model, is it's just a difference. It's a natural part of life. And the problems to be fixed are actually the systems that are creating barriers. It is not the people existing within the system. So that this is just a way to approach as you're writing things, and especially as you're considering the work of this project, keep in mind that we're talking about systems that need to change, not solving people, if that makes sense. Disability pride. This slide has the disability pride flag on the right, or the emblem of disability pride. You take pride in your whole self and your whole identity, and this includes your disability. It's an expression of the disability experience. It's a natural part of diversity. Again, you're probably hearing a lot of things that are very similar to that new socioeconomic model, right? You see this show up in disability pride. And then at the bottom, focuses on the social model of disability. The next few slides are intersectionality statements that the council kind of established as some guiding beliefs. Just about the intersection of disability and other identities. Again, it goes back to the whole person. There's entire people. We all have so many identities that we carry. But it consists of many identities of who we are. Some identities are visible, others are not. There's multiple characteristics, race, ethnicity, gender, all kinds of things that make up a person's identity. And these identities have the most impact in areas which were marginalized. So that's an important one to remember for a couple things we'll get into with this project. And it's just important. It's an important tool in understanding each other, to understand that there's these multiple identities that make up who we are and who we're working with. This has been an interesting project as we go through things, and I'll tell you why. So there's this, if you're not familiar or haven't worked a lot in the disability space, there's this aspect of person first language versus identity first language. So person first and identity first are distinctions in how you identify people. So on the most basic level, I am a disabled person. That's your identity first, disabled being your identity, person being second, right? So I'm a disabled person versus I'm a person who is disabled. So I'm using the person first and then the attribute second. And this is actually, you'll encounter very strong opinions either way. There are people with disabilities who prefer people first language. And then I've met people with disabilities who very much want that part of their identity out front. That's something they're proud of. That's something that is important to them. And so this project, usually this slide says we would prefer you use people first language in whatever you promote, but this one's special because you're going to use both. As you talk with people across all these counties and all these places, you're going to encounter strong opinions one way or the other. And so we want you to work with your storyteller on how they want to be identified. This is there's a hyperlink. Whenever this is shared, you'll see at the bottom that this is Stella Young, and this video that's linked there is about 9 minutes long, but I encourage that you watch it. But She wants to live in a world, that quote on the right, where we don't have such low expectations of people with disabilities that we congratulate them just for getting out of bed. So this inspirational aspect, you know, a lot of times you see stories about people with disabilities used as this inspiration, like, oh, they've overcome so much and like all of these things. And so avoiding that lens. We're scrolling my notes here. But like I said, I encourage you to watch this video. And then I put this slide in here. This is, you know, goes along with the inspiration, the kind of avoiding that inspirational aspect or lens of these stories. No pity is what this says. So we're telling the real stories and the real barriers and the real successes of people. And we want to be careful in the way that we're telling stories, that it's not just invoking pity, or pity is the best word. We can highlight a barrier and be like, this needs to be changed. This is a person experiencing a thing that is systemically broken. So all of that chunk of the presentation is all very nuanced, but it is philosophical. And I do think it's important that you realize those lenses of things as you think about your proposal to the council. The next is the technical aspects, so kind of general guidelines and budgeting. We ask that you submit your information in plain language in the proposals that you do put together. There's 3 links in here. Again, this will all be shared with you, but you can read more about plain language if you're not familiar with it at plainlanguage.gov. There's a lot of resources on it. There's something that we use a lot called the Hemingway app. This is free. Again, that hyperlinks to it. You literally can copy text into it and it will spit out the grade level that it's at. And we look for things to be more like a 5th grade reading level. So at the top, you know, a lot of times it'll say this is a grade 9. And so you want to get it down to grade 5. And there's another app called Readable. And then I will say, lately I've been using AI features to put things into the reading level that would qualify as plain language. So there's a lot of resources for this. And again, that's something that once you would be selected as a grantee, we can support you in as well. Be innovative. Again, I mentioned this at the beginning. This is an artistic, kind of beautiful project, and you are subject matter experts in this field of storytelling and art, and invoking change through art. And so we encourage innovation as long as you are accomplishing the listed outcomes and in addressing those things. How you get there, we would love to see your creativity. We encourage you to include people with disabilities in the planning and work of the project. This is, again, the nature of the project is you're going to do that because they're going to be the storytellers in what you create. But I would encourage you, if there's other ways that you can engage with people with disabilities and other aspects of planning the project, or the direction, or any other parts of the project other than storyteller, I encourage you to highlight those in your application. And identifying a group that is unserved or underserved. I'm going to talk about that a little more on the next slide. But this is something that you would want to include in the project and how they would benefit from it. And just making sure you read through the whole NoFA. There is a list at the end of everything you need to supply. There's that kind of punch list of the application materials, but just read through the NoFA one more time and make sure you've got everything, or know where it's coming from. So this is this diversity, inclusion, and cultural and linguistic competence. So that last slide, you need to identify a group that is unserved or underserved that's going to benefit from this project. And this slide lists a number of different marginalized communities. This can be based on race, ethnicity, economic status, age, sexual identity, all kinds of things. So in your proposal and how you're setting out on the project, you need to identify another group that is impacted by this work and that will shape how you pursue this project. So I work best with examples. So I'm going to give an example. This is not what you have to do. It can be anything, but say you identify ahead of time that you're also going to focus on poverty. So you're going to focus on poverty issues and economic status. So that expands beyond disability, right? That there's many people impacted by that. So you might identify that as the underserved or unserved group, and then say that you are going to propose that a certain percentage of the stories are going to be focused on poverty, that you're going to make sure that there's an underlying kind of story of this other issue. So you should think about it. It helped me when I was thinking through this to think about the end result of the project. We're wanting to have stories from all the counties in the state of Missouri to share for systems change. So this is going to be with policymakers or people that we're trying to educate about barriers. And so if you think about how it can be used, if you focused, for example, on poverty issues, that would enable us to have a powerful, kind of a powerful natural connection to our allies that are working on, food insecurity or in the poverty space, or working on those kind of policies. We can have that intersection and engage with them in that systems change. Language access, there's some information on this slide, but your project material should be provided in English and Spanish, and that's in the NoFA. The things need to be translated into Spanish. It's the second most spoken language in Missouri, so that's an important access point. Okay, and these two slides got really easy for you all. So you would notice in the NoFA that there are 3 different levels or ways that we calculate the match required by the grantee that we work with. And it always has to do with who is benefiting from this project and who is being engaged with this project. And are those counties considered poverty counties, non-poverty counties, or are you working in both? Fun fact for everyone is that because you're working in all 114 counties, you are automatically the mixed rate of match. So it made it easier. A lot of times there's some confusion and technical support needed around this factor and how you figure out your match. So it will be the mixed match rate. So the whole budget for the project is $85,000. And then on top of that, there's a match required by the grantee or the person selected. So this can include funding or cash. You can include volunteer hours. There's a potential for a lot of hours volunteered depending on how you shape your budget in this grant. In-kind donations such as office space and utilities. There's a lot of ways to calculate match. And there's a few rules around that. You need to make sure that your match is not using other federal funds for match. So if you're an organization that receives a lot of grants, you'll just want to make sure whatever you're counting as match is not funded by other federal funds. And these are all questions as you put together your budget. And if you have any questions about this, I'm happy to support and answer those questions. The products created by MODDC grants are free to the community. And then you would have to include a sustainability plan for the products that you're creating as part of this grant. This slide you get to kind of just be aware of, but you don't have to worry about too much, but includes resources on how we figure poverty versus non-poverty counties if you're interested. But again, you will use the mixed rate because you're going to be working in all the counties. This is more about the sources of match. There's a graphic on here that it can be local, state, public, or private funds, that it can be in-kind contributions, and there's some of those things to think about with in-kind. And then there's an orange bullet or orange bubble that again talks about the federal, other federal funds not being used for match. We require the breakdown of the budget by federal fiscal year because we work in both, which is fun because that slide earlier that we are part of the Department of Mental Health, which is state, this federal. So you want to break your budget down to be from October 1st to September 30th. You're going to span a couple of federal fiscal years. It's an 18-month project, but you'll have, you'll dip into 2 federal fiscal years. Again, it's federal dollars. Are you getting the point? Other federal funds cannot be used as match. And then finally, the application part of it. And I'm going to get into this actually with Q&A because there were some questions about collaboration, but collaboration is welcome. You can subcontract parts of your grant. You would receive the grant funding, and then your budget, if you have said that you want to hire a person to perform a function or an organization to do something, you can do that. So you can subcontract, and we welcome collaboration and see that as a powerful part of you reaching these outcomes. Cross-disability focus, which we went over, making sure the application is in plain language. These will be shared with the council exactly how they are submitted. I review them. I do an overview, which we'll go over in the next slide, to make sure that everything is met, to make sure that the requirements are there before I pass them on. The only thing I do is put them into one document and merge them into one PDF with all of the materials, but I will not edit typos. I won't change fonts. I'm not going to shift anything around. So just know when you submit it, that's exactly how it's going to appear to the council. These are the important dates to remember. This is at the very top of the NoFA document, and I pulled it out on a slide just because there's lots of pieces, but we're trucking down the list a little bit. Today is the webinar, of course. The applications are due on August 29th by 5 p.m. Again, we adhere to this competitive bid process, which is really rigid. So if your email is timestamped 5:01, I cannot accept it. So just bear in mind, it is 5 p.m. on August 29th. It can be before that, but that is when those are due. I will review, the staff review is me again to make sure that everything is met there. And then the committee will begin their review on September 2nd. So between September 2nd and September 19th, they're reading through applications, filling out their scorecards, which the scorecard used to evaluate the grants is in the NoFA. So I encourage you to look at that too. That's an important tool in making sure you are accomplishing all of the things the council is going to look at. And then we'll announce recipients on September 23rd. And then our intention will be to start the contract on October 1st. So we'll have the contract there. Okay, I've got everything. Okay, I know they're a little bit small, but there were 9 questions submitted, and I am going to go through each of them because they are important and they're good questions. And so the first one is, do you feel the council would consider a full-length documentary film as a medium for this project? It can be delivered as a full-length collective, but also divided into individual stories. The NoFA is written to require 1,000-word minimum stories in a high-quality booklet. Each story has to be saved as a PDF with 100 printed initially. This is all in the NoFA. However, the NoFA and the council encourages the use of various mediums to tell the story, and they can be done to supplement the written word, but not replace it. So you do have to have written stories, but can do other things as your budget allows. Does the council envision one person or organization leading the project? For example, and these are copied directly from questions, so I removed the identity of the organizations, but could an organization consider submitting a proposal to include hiring an employee to work alongside staff? So that's what I just talked about. Yes, you can put whatever you want in your budget that is going to allow you to accomplish this, including subcontracting. So yes, the contracts allow for hiring of subcontractors within the grant and just needs to be included in the proposal budget. Are there certain qualifications of the organization selected for this grant to meet in terms of business standing, whether they're a nonprofit or an established business entity? All grantees of MODDC must be registered with MOBIs in order to receive payment for submitted invoices. That is something that we will establish with you after you're awarded the contract. So don't sweat about being in MOBIs right now, but that is how you receive your payment. But organizations must be able to disperse funds and be able to legally receive grant funds. So any questions you have beyond that, I would encourage you to reach out to your accountant to determine if you have those capabilities. As head of a media organization, I frequently travel throughout the United States. Am I required to be based in Missouri the duration of the 18-month period? And the answer is no, there's no required amount of time in the state of Missouri for this work. It's expected there will be some travel to homes, workplaces, and other locations to get the authentic representation of the storyteller, but there's no set amount of time you have to be in the state. In addition to written stories and photography, will video elements be included in the project? If so, are there specifications on length or topic? Again, this is very similar to the first question, but written photographs and stories are required for each story. Other mediums would supplement the written word. Since there's no specific video requirements, it would be the grantee's discretion on the length of the video or other specifications. Just include this in your NoFA application, that's something you intend to do, and also keep in mind the language access requirements of materials that you produce when you're thinking about videos and things like that. In the grant packet, it's stated stories will be in both English and Spanish. Will the grantee be responsible for providing those translations? Yes, the grantee will be responsible for putting those in Spanish and should be considered in the proposed budget. And I will say to this that can be included as a line item in the budget, or some organizations have the capabilities in-house, and that could be part of the match or in kind. I've seen that done with other grants. In the grant application, do we have preferred methods for receiving past relevant works? Yes, it is preferred to receive them electronically. That's how they'll be forwarded on to the council. So this includes scans or links to relevant works if you've got a website or something like that. They're shared with council members electronically. If you need another accommodation to share your relevant work, I encourage you to reach out to us beforehand so I can make sure I am providing those. So if it's something that would need to be scanned or digitized in order to get it out to the council, just let me know. And in establishing which counties are poverty level, am I correct in understanding the match to funding rate will be established as a whole for the entire state rather than by county? Again, the easy answer to this question is that the nature of this project requires all of the counties. So it's automatically going to fulfill or fall under the mixed rate match. And then the last question, when meeting with potential advocates and capturing data for their stories, will part of the established budget be allowed to be used as monetary value gifts for the individuals as a way to thank them for their time? Federal contracts do not allow for spending on gifts, but the storytellers in this project are considered subject matter experts in the field they are being interviewed about. So in this instance, they would be subcontractors in the contract. If this is how the organization would like to propose using the funds, this needs to be accounted for in the NoFA application budget. Any time committed to this project, whether paid or volunteer, should be accounted for in the project. Because remember, volunteer time is one of those things that can be included in the match calculations. Future questions, we encourage you to continue to ask questions. Again, my role is to support you as best I can in submitting an application to be considered. A response is received within 2 working days is our commitment to you all. All questions and answers will be posted simultaneously on the website and emailed to the recipient. So if Stacy emails me a question, I get 2 working days to get that response to you, but at the same time, I click send to the email to Stacy answering her question, it's going to go up on the website. This just ensures everybody has the same information at the same time. So I encourage you to keep checking the website for updated Q&As that appear on there. There's Stacy.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question from the Q&A.
Oh, okay. Let me do this last slide. Is that okay?
Oh, please do.
It's actually not as eventful as I thought, but these are just other ways to be involved with MODDC. You're looking at that right now and applying for a grant. We encourage you to connect with other projects. We've funded other projects that might have a resource that's really relevant to your organization. So we encourage you to reach out or ask us how you can connect and use those resources. We have trainings. You can apply. There's a program we have called Partners in Policymaking, which Stacy works on, which is pretty much like a 9-month long intensive monthly meeting process where you get a deep training on disability history and how to do advocacy. And this is for self-advocates or parents. Becoming a council member. Again, we are always looking for self-advocates or parents to become council members. And then finally signing up for emails at moddcouncil.org. Many of you, I'm not sure how you got connected to this project. I'm glad you did. But we have one listserv that's only for funding opportunities. So I encourage you to check that out. Okay, now, Stacy, I'm all yours, and I'm not going to bother clicking on the chat or Q&A. I'll just have you tell me what those are.
Perfect. All right. So I went ahead and put it in the chat just so we could all read it at the same time. At the conclusion and collecting of writing the stories, will website design and interaction be part of this grant, or will stories be handed over to MODDC?
I'm going to double check.
At the conclusion of the grant.
It requires, and I'm looking at my grant here because this is me making sure everything is up to snuff. Yes, so the stories will be published on an interactive and accessible website in English and Spanish. So that is part of the deliverable of the grant, that you will put the stories on a website. Did that answer the question? We can give that person time to respond.
And yes, it did.
Okay. Okay. So glad.
And I went ahead and put that link that you just talked about in the chat, Leanne, where they can be checking back to see if there's more information on the NoFA.
Oh, great. Thank you. And I'm sure they appreciate it too.
And I do not see any other questions in the chat or the Q&A.
Okay. I'm going to check one more time. Great. All right. Well, I'm going to stop share. We, again, are so grateful that you are looking into this grant, and we don't want any technical aspects to be overwhelming or a barrier in you applying. So the email that's in the grant or in the NoFA, the MODDC email address, you can email any questions to that. Again, thank you so much for taking the time. This is going to be posted on the website, and it's also will be emailed out. You guys are the lucky ones that registered, so you get the emails and everything kind of delivered to you in that way. If there are no more questions, which I don't see any more, I wish everyone a great day, and thank you again for your time.